My name is Dylan. I'm in rabbinical school. I'm a male to female transsexual. I am Asperger's. I'm dyslexic, blind. I'm in a wheelchair. I have dysarthria, so I use AAC and have non-epileptic seizures and epilepsy. I'm a musician and filmmaker, and I have a BA in history. I have an MBA in music business.
So, my name is Margot. I have cerebral palsy. I study biology at Penn State Harrisburg, and I'm an independent filmmaker.
What is a seizure?
Seizures are an electrical or chemical imbalance in the brain. In epilepsy, the imbalance is electrical, where the electrical signals fire all at once, causing abnormal brain activity and sometimes brain damage. If it happens more than 3 times, the person is diagnosed with epilepsy. Non-epileptic seizures look similar, but are from a sudden release of too many chemicals in the brain.
Can you die from epilepsy?
Unfortunately, yes, people can die from epilepsy if the seizure causes brain damage or stops breathing. Non-epileptic seizures can also cause death from injuries. There was a Disney actor that was known for a show called Jessie on the Disney Channel named Cameron Boyce that unfortunately died of epilepsy. His official cause of death was something called sudden unexplained death in epilepsy, where the person who has seizures is found dead, and there's no reason other than perhaps a seizure that wasn't caught for the death. But because the epilepsy is one of the diagnoses, is kind of assumed that that's how he passed away. They think that he stopped breathing during the seizure in the middle of the night. So you can die from it. Are there any historical precedences for dismissing the impairment?
There have been many historical stigmas of dismissal and people being accused of things and dismissed. People with epilepsy were thought to be possessed by demons. There are a few cases I will highlight. During the Age of Exploration on the Mayflower, the Puritans accused many women of being witches and threw them in water to see if they were witches by seeing if they float, and it shows the danger of accusing people of things they are not. In Europe, women who were emotional after birthing children hysterical when it was really the effects of miscarriage and postpartum depression. In modern times, having an abortion can increase the chances of having postpartum depression.
What has been your history of seizures?
At age 3, every time I heard fireworks on the FDR drive, my body would shut down and I would hysterically cry. Between the ages of 8 and 16, anytime I played a first-person shooter game, I lost track of my character as I saw flashing lights. I become disoriented and nauseous. When I would watch movies and see flashing lights, I would have absences where I would forget the whole movie. At age 27, I was taking a shower. The shower did not have any hot water, so the water was extremely cold. As I was taking a shower, as the water got colder and colder, my body started to shake and I had some motor control, but my eyes started to twitch and I could not open my eyes for 30 seconds. My muscles and joints went extremely stiff and I could hardly move. At age 27, on January 19th, 2022, I was standing at a bus stop in freezing rain in southern Jerusalem. My body started to shake uncontrollably, my joints locked, I could hardly talk. I started twitching for 10 to 15 minutes, then it stopped. After it happened, I was numb. At age 27, on January 20th, I was walking through a market in Jerusalem, Mahane Yehuda Market. I was walking through the market and started to hear very loud electronic dance music, and as I was walking, I started to twitch and shake and my joints went numb.
And my health took a turn for the worst. In retrospect, so did the line. In Texas, I experienced the first nail in the coffin of my health. I experienced my first seizure due to cold water. When I had seizures, my eyes would twitch and my legs would shake, and I would go into paralysis for between 5 to 20 minutes. After I had my first seizure, I had left Texas for New York and then Miami. because of a travel ban in Israel. I started to see a pattern to my seizures where they started to get worse. Before I went to Israel and before I'd left New York, I asked my doctor about these seizures and a medical mask exemption. When I was in Miami, I looked deeper into the seizures and I started making a seizure log. I realized an overlap between epilepsy and autism, and I began to think, was my past meltdowns actually seizures? When I arrived in Israel, my health got worse. By this point, the seizures got worse and much more violent. Along with the seizure log, we got one seizure on video for the first time. I was able to talk during the seizure and most of the other seizures.
Okay.
How does this look to you?
Looks horrible.
Does this look like a seizure to you?
Yes, it does.
I'm sorry you have to see this.
I know. It's okay. Can't help it.
So do me a favor, keep an eye on the time because I can't really open up my eyes right now.
Yeah, it's been about a minute. You're all right.
I have no feeling in my arms right now. Double Vic. Has begun. I was in Spot. I spent Shabbat going in and out of consciousness, and it got so bad I couldn't even do morning prayers for Shabbat. And I noticed the seizures would affect my eyes.
Ask you, what types of seizures have you had?
I have had a few grand mal seizures, absent seizures,
Cleo? Cleo, if you're trying to freak me out or something, forget it. It's not going to work.
and focal seizures.
What do the seizures feel like?
And Dr. Stephen Shore says if you have met one autistic, you have met one autistic. The same is true for epileptics. My seizures start with me twitching and have changed over time, and this is true for anyone with epilepsy depending on medication and brain damage if any. And this contributes to how they feel and how they look. Sometimes people who have seizures and migraines have something called an aura, and it is like an internal warning of a seizure or like a vision change or small physical change like the pupils getting larger.
Yeah, you're all dilated. Wow. Honey, are you having a seizure?
And some new research says the aura is part of the seizure or migraine itself. Although my seizures changed over time, I developed a gauging sound, which led to me banging my head. I used to shake in all four limbs. Now I don't move my legs much since I have lost use of my legs, but I do have some involuntary movements. Every time I had a new seizure, I lost vision and neurologic function. At the end of my seizures, after my body is done doing the main part of whatever it is doing, I will feel paralyzed in one or all four limbs. The last part is my post-ictal phase where I have brain fog and get loopy like Jimmy Neutron. During this I become incoherent and make bad jokes about American history or political philosophy, and it feels like my brain goes very fast. I would even make jokes about being disabled.
Yeah, I don't think it's
Place your bets. How many brain cells are gonna die?
Yep.
Place your bets. Going once, going twice. Sold to the porno. What's up, Dick? I'm Bugs Bunny.
What?
It's easier to have my eyes closed. That's nice. A great human being. We're all created equal. I am rude and obnoxious. I am ableist.
Your eyes
I
fell
can't move
asleep.
my arms. I'm ableist. A poet! Ah, my eyes. My eyes. Oh.
Those who deal with connective tissue disorders will affect the hypermobility and you can dislocate, which I have many times.
The paralysis that Dylan feels after a seizure is called Todd's paralysis, which is where parts of the body feel paralyzed because the brain does not work correctly during or after the seizure, and this can last from moments to hours. I have something called spasticity from cerebral palsy, and it feels like the muscles are extremely tight and pulling on the joints around the tight muscles. I also have a startle reflex as part of my spasticity where I jump involuntarily anytime something sudden happens, even though I am not frightened of it, which people with dystonia also have. Do you have spasticity, Dylan?
My spasticity as it relates to seizures is interesting because the affected limb will spasm and I will become fisted for hours and the joints will lock, which is extremely painful. Sometimes when I have seizures and hit my head, I will become so spastic in my mouth I lose the ability to speak and my speech becomes garbled, so I started using AAC as a precaution.
What has been the long-term effect on your body?
Since my epilepsy went untreated for so long, I lost neurologic function. I lost the ability to walk and 80% of my vision.
What has been your experience with epilepsy treatment?
I have gone to many doctors and been laughed out of the room. Although it often takes years to get diagnosed, I finally have a diagnosis of epilepsy of a mixed type.
An EEG is when a bunch of electrodes are attached to the head to record electrical activity in the brain to diagnose seizures. This happens over a period of minutes or days in a hospital. Have you ever had an EEG?
I have had 3 EEGs. The first one came back negative, which was only 20 minutes, and they did not try to trigger seizures. The second one came back positive because they flashed lights in my face to trigger seizures. The third one was 5 days and it was a video EEG. This one came back positive, where most of my seizures are non-epileptic, but I have epileptic activity when I'm sleepy or ready for bed.
Have your seizures improved since being in the hospital?
Yes, this isn't true of everyone with epilepsy, but my seizures are well controlled on medications on the first try. My medications are Depakote, Triptyl, and Baclofen.
Depakote and Baclofen are a type of GABA. GABA is a common chemical for the brain, but people with autism and cerebral palsy often lack this chemical in their brains, making their brain overactive, causing seizures. Trileptal is a mood stabilizer that also calms the brain. Just because a person with epilepsy is medicated does not mean they are cured or won't have seizures. These seizures that happen while on medication are called breakthrough seizures. Certain medications do not mix with heat, like Depakote, so do not go out in heat if you take this medication. Depakote is a very strong drug and can cause damage to the liver and cause many side effects. It should also not be taken by anybody who has not been prescribed it by a doctor. How has this medication affected your overall neurologic decline?
Baruch Hashem, that progression stopped. I knew. This I knew. Cover, mazel tov, 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 I knew.
You had mentioned you got laughed out of the room by doctors in Florida, and people are often given a diagnosis of functional neurological disorder. Have you heard of this?
Functional movement disorder has been thrown around in Florida for 2 reasons. One, because they did not know what was going on with me, and the second reason is because they want to pass the buck and have told me if I go to a therapist I will be able to walk because I have PTSD and gender dysphoria. I experienced transphobia from the doctors who suggested FND, who claimed I made everything up.
Considering you do not prescribe to the current idea of FND, what would you prefer this group of symptoms to be called?
I think that FND is not something that is real because different doctors define it so different, and everyone who has it also has other physical and underlying conditions, and those who have it have so many variations of symptoms it may actually be many conditions that are wrongly labeled as a single condition. There are ways to prove someone has FND like fMRI and reflex tests, which I have never had. I am happy to talk to psychologists since I'm bipolar, but none of them have suggested I have FND. Had I accepted the idea of FND, I would be dead by now. This goes to show that you should be a scholar in your own diagnosis, and if it does not fit, keep fighting for answers. If FND is a neurologic condition, we should humble ourselves and admit we do not know much about the brain. I do accept the idea that a clinical diagnosis of FND is necessary for administrative and insurance purposes so people can get accommodated in school, work, and public places since it is currently a disability under the Americans with Disabilities Act. I would rather call these symptoms neuromessenger syndrome because it has to do with bad signaling between the brain and the body. In many ways with FND is synonymous with the older diagnosis of hysteria and is more common in biological women, which is ironic because I have a few diagnoses that are more common in women, yet I am a male to female transsexual.
Dunn has non-epileptic seizures, which is linked to her history of fainting and migraines. Non-epileptic seizures and epilepsy are both linked to bipolar and migraines, and Dunn has a migraine disorder.
Is there a neurologic overlap between mental health disorders and developmental disability and both epilepsy and non-epileptic seizures?
Yes, bipolar disorder causes similar brain activity to epilepsy. Many seizures follow the same brain pathway as bipolar episodes. Mood stabilizer medications are often used to control seizures. Epilepsy is seen in both cerebral palsy and autism, and 17% of people with autism have non-epileptic seizures. 27% of people with autism have bipolar. Are there any figures in Jewish historical documents or historical figures who have bipolar and epilepsy?
A lot of rabbis of the Talmud are suspected of having bipolar and epilepsy and non-epileptic seizures. Ashkenazi Jews like myself are much more genetically likely to have bipolar. Another thing is when we think of the history of Kabbalah, there is a history of seizures, and being so spiritually inclined they go insane and have a non-epileptic seizure right after studying, so people cannot study Kabbalah that way until at least 40. There is one Kabbalist named Satchai Sevi, and he was thought to have bipolar because he would become manic and then get into depressive states.
Are there any pop culture figures or people in the media who have bipolar and or epilepsy?
Neil Young has epilepsy and has a long history in rock and roll. When Neil Young was in the Buffalo Springfield, he was known to have seizures from lights on stage. Another good example of both bipolar and epilepsy was Ian Curtis of Joy Division, and his work matured into new wave. Unfortunately, his bipolar killed him early in his career from suicide tragically, and the band renamed themselves New Order.
What are some accommodations for seizures?
So there are multiple accommodations for epilepsy. Before we talk about accommodations, it is important for the person with epilepsy to know what triggers their seizures so people know how and when to apply accommodations. For instance, if the seizures are caused by blood pressure changes, there is a watch that can alert them to a seizure. Another accommodation for photosensitive epilepsy is glasses to block light and seizure warnings on media. Even blind people can see flashing lights if they have light perception and need to be careful if they are epileptic. In some cases, the brain will register the flash even if the blind person is not aware of it. There are also seizure alert dogs that are service dogs that can sense when seizures are coming. Seizure alert dogs have access to all public places under the Americans with Disabilities Act. The accommodations do not always mean a seizure will be prevented. Different people need different accommodations for the same diagnosis of epilepsy or any other disability.
Are there any seizure warnings that were done well on examples of media?
The Green Day music video on their album Saviors and the Lilo and Stitch 2025 remake.
So Stitch, why is it important to have a seizure warning on your movie?
Because Stitch and aliens use plasma blasters in the movie, and the aliens use the plasma blasters to come after Stitch in some scenes.
What are some examples of what happens when no seizure warning is added?
When the movie The Incredibles 2 came out, there was a huge controversy because the movie had flashing lights in many scenes that caused people to have seizures in the movie theater as they tried to watch. Disney got into trouble for it and had to add a seizure warning later for the rest of the theatrical run.
What would be your advice for someone who sees you or someone else have a seizure?
The first thing is to stay calm because if you don't, you might make a mistake that could injure you or the person seizing or could complicate the seizure. The second thing is whenever someone is having a seizure, even if they don't seem conscious, assume the person is competent. In some seizures like non-epileptic seizures and Lyme seizures, the person may be able to talk to you and can hear everything you are saying. It is important to put the person on their side after so they don't choke or swallow vomit, which is important for people like me who have a history of projectile vomit, and remove anything that may be dangerous from the immediate area during the seizure. Never put anything in the person's mouth or they can choke. I had some badly trained nurses try to feed me water through a straw while I was still in Todd's paralysis, which was dangerous. Whatever you see someone have a seizure, time it if you can, because a seizure longer than 5 minutes can cause brain damage, and call 911 if the person hits their head, which is dangerous. My seizures have lasted anywhere from 30 seconds to 3 hours. The seizure first aid is the same for both epileptic and epileptic seizures because there is no way to tell which type is happening in the moment. This is why you should plan for the worst and hope for the best. I also suggest people with non-epileptic and epileptic seizures get medical alert bracelets and wallet cards, and the medical alert should mention that people with non-epileptic seizures should not be intubated to stop the seizures or it could kill them accidentally. What is it like for you to watch someone you love go through seizures?
It is scary and sad to watch Dylan have seizures because I do not like seeing Dylan in pain. The first time I saw Dylan have a seizure, I did not know what they were, and I was even more shocked that Dylan could talk through them. But I was also relieved Dylan could talk through them because, as my mentor always said, if you are talking, you are breathing. I thought it was so sweet of Dylan to try to comfort me during her seizures.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
Seizures. I have also seen Dylan almost die from seizures before, which were the worst, and I also saw her faint in physical therapy before having a seizure, but after I got used to seeing the seizures, I was able to be calm and know what to expect and how to help her so they weren't as scary. Seizures are not fun, but they become like accommodating any other disability where it is part of life. What would your advice be to someone who just got newly diagnosed as epileptic?
My advice to newly diagnosed epileptics is that your epilepsy does not define you. Just because your brain explodes doesn't mean you don't have a life worth living, even if it restricts some things. Some brains process things faster than others. How can you not live in fear? I'm not afraid to seize, it's just something I live with. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. I thought I would keep having seizures until I lost all bodily functions and died, but my seizures are under control, so there is hope. I can't say that there is anything good about having seizures, because there isn't, but brains work differently and that is okay. As the Beatles and Joe Cocker would say, I get by with a little help from my friends and I would not be here without my friends. What is your advice for someone who has a loved one with epilepsy?
If someone you know is having seizures, believe them and take notes on what you see of the seizures so you can provide information to doctors who do not see the seizures firsthand. If the person with seizures has consented to ahead of time, videotape the seizures so medical professionals will have a visual example of what is happening. Don't treat the person with seizures as if they can't do anything. Let the person who has seizures decide what they can or cannot handle as far as seizure triggers. Just be a good friend and love them.